Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into something every Node.js developer needs to master. That's asynchronous patterns. In Node.js, handling async operations effectively is key to building efficient applications. So I will be covering three core async patterns, which is callbacks, promises, and async await, and when to use each one. Let's get started. First, let's talk about why async operations are essential in Node.js. Node.js is built on a single-threaded, non-blocking event loop, which means if one part of your code is busy, everything else waits. By using async patterns, we can handle operations like file input, output, database queries, and HTTP requests without blocking other parts of the app. Callbacks were one of the earliest way of handling async operations in Node.js. So let's look at a basic example of how callbacks works. So for example, let's say we are trying to read a file. So to read the file, we need the Node.js file system module. Then we can do fs.read file, the file name. Let's just give it file.txt. Now, if we run this command, it's going to read the file. But then, how do we get the content of the file? That's where the callbacks comes in. So we need a second parameter, which is a callback. So now the callback returns an error and also the data. That's the actual data you are looking for. So we need to check if there is an error in reading the file before we proceed. So we can do console.error error, then error reading file. Then we can do something like this to output the error and return. So we don't want to continue if there is an error, but if there is no error, we want to console console log the file. So file content is, then we can have the data. So this is basically how to do an async operation, because reading a file is an input output operation. So it doesn't run on the main thread of Node.js. So it goes and run on another thread. When the result is ready, then it's the callback is called. So and let's run this. So this is an example of running async function using callback. So let's do index.js. So now, okay, sorry, we don't have a file yet. So let's do file.txt, and let's just put something like this 20 inside, and let's rerun our code. Now you can see it's returning a buffer, so we are sure the data is there. But if we want to actually get the actual text, so we can pass an option encoding equals to UTF-8. So if we do this, then we save it and we run our application. So it's going to return the actual data, not the buffer. So here, and that's how you get your data. So after getting the data inside the callback, we might decide that we want to perform another operation. Maybe for example, we want to multiply the data we get by 10. So now in this case, what we're going to do is we can do const new input equals to pass int. So data times 10. Then we can use fs.write. So it's another input output operation. So fs.write, then we can give it a name, file times 10.txt. So it's going to create this file. Then we want to pass in this file, this data dot string dot to string. This is a number, so we have to convert it to a string to be able to do that. Now once we run this command, once you run this code, you're going to perform the operation. What if you want to perform another operation after writing the file? Maybe you want to multiply it by 20 again. So that's when we have another callback here. So after doing the first write, we want to do another write. And that's how callbacks work. You have callback inside another callback inside another callback. And if you have too many of it, you end up with a scenario that is called callback error. So if we have this, you can say console.log file times 10 saved. So this line 12 is going to be executed once after writing this file. So let's run the code and you can see. So now it's created a file. You can see times 10, and that's it. And that's how callbacks work. So you have one callback inside another callback and inside another callback. And if you have very complex application, this might not be the ideal way to do it, because over time the code becomes very difficult to read, and also you end up with a callback error. And that brings us to our next method, which is called promises. Let's talk about promises. Promises were introduced to improve readability and help escape the callback error situation. They allow you to write cleaner code by chaining async operations, and here is how promises works. So let's use our example code. So I've commented out the callback method. So now we still have our fs. So I'm going to do fs dot read file. So now, because we are going to be using promises, so we're going to be doing this dot promises. So this is very important if you are using fs. So we are going to be using the promise version of the import. So now fs read file dot text, then I want to encoding utf-8. Now there are two concepts in promises. So there is the then. So the then is when the result is ready. So when the result is ready, you want to get the result, and it accepts a function. So inside the function is that's where you get the data. So and the good thing about this dot then is that you can chain it together as long as you want. You can do another then, chain it together as long as you want. So you can do file content, then you do data. Then after you have done all the then you can use dot catch for the error case. So this is also a function. So let me just copy this one like this. So and that's it, and that's how to use promise. So the promise makes use of then, and with this then you can chain it together. You can do another dot then for another case, and that's how you make use of promises. So this one is an improved version. This one is easier to read compared to callbacks, and also it's easier to reason about. So let's save it and run our application. Node index.js. So you can see that we have a correct response, and that's how to make use of them. With promises, our code is more readable and we can handle errors in a cleaner way with the catch. Promises are great for operations that need to be chained one after the other, but they can still get a bit messy with more complex sequences. And that brings us to our next method, which is async await, which is a much more very compact and very readable method. So let's dive in. Finally, let's talk about the ultimate way of handling an async operation. Let's look at async await. Async await builds on promises, allowing us to write asynchronous code in a way that looks synchronous. This is especially useful for code that needs to follow a specific order. Here is how it works. So if we come here, we are still making use of our async promises, fs promises, because async await builds on promises. So here we can have a function here, read file So the reason why we are having a function is so that we can make use of the async keyword. So in this case, then you can now write your actual code here, const data. So here you will make use of await fs. So the normal way you write your code, fs read file, then file dot text. Let me put this in a quote. Then we want to get it in UTF mode. So we can use encoding UTF-8, and that's it. So here on the next line, we are going to have our code, our file content, data, and that's it. So this code runs as if it's a synchronous code. And one thing we have to take care of is that when we are using async, so we need to make use of try catch. And that's it. So let me just do this. Let me copy the error here. I mean the console log here, and put it here. And that's how to do async await. So you can see the code is much more readable, and so it's easy to reason about. You are running this line, and once this line finishes, then the next line. Unlike the other ones where you can run this line and the second line might run before the result of the first line comes, or in the callback. So if you run this line, if I run another code after this block, the next code might run before the actual content of the file is read, and that's not what we want. What we want is we want to get the result of our fs.read file, then upload the content, then we can continue from there. And if we now do this, if we now do this, then our Node.js, you can see we still have our file content, and that's how to do it. If you are using a newer version of Node.js, probably don't need to create a function so that you can make use of the await syntax, like the way I just did by creating a read file function and instantiating it. You can make use of the newly introduced top level await feature. So if you are using Node.js 20 and above, that's for me, I'm using 20.17.0. So you might want to use a top level await. So if you want to use top level await, your file must be a module. So you must be running inside a module. So if you the way you can run inside a module is do npm init dash y. Then you go to, once you run that, it creates a package.json file for you. Then you can go here and do type module. So and that's all. So once there, you can come here and remove all this. The reason why I put this function there in the first place is that so as to be able to make use of our weight. But if you are using Node.js 20 and above, so you might not need that. So you might want to just run your code, because async await works in, or you can make use of top level async await. So in this case, I'm just going to do this, save it. Let me comment out this as well. So if I rerun my code, okay, I think I have an error inside this place. Yeah, so let me save this. Okay, so as I'm getting into much more word, so I want to use import here, because that's what ESM understands. Import fs slash promises, so I can comment this out. This method is for CommonJS, and this one is for the ESM. So if I save this and I do this, you can see the code still works. So now with this method, I'm making use of async await ESM top level async await approach, and that's how it works. As you can see, async await simplifies our code even further, making it easier to read and maintain. This pattern is highly recommended for modern Node.js development as it combines readability with efficient error handling. So now let's talk about when to use which pattern. So you make use of callback when you have a very simple script or simple operation to perform, but try to avoid it in larger operations. Promises are excellent for chaining operations and handling async tasks that don't need complex sequences. And best of all, async await is best for modern applications. And there it is, three core async patterns in Node.js. As you grow as a developer, mastering these async techniques will help you write code that's both efficient and easy to read. Make sure to experiment with each pattern and see which one fits your project needs. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe for more productivity workflow tips, and leave a comment with any async questions you might have. I will see you later in the next video. Thanks, Dr. Tobes.